Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for September 23rd of 2023, and currently we have an enhanced risk for southeastern Kansas into western Missouri and northeastern Oklahoma across the Central Plains into the Midwest. We also do have a slight risk that does extend across eastern Oklahoma as far north as eastern South Dakota and southwestern Minnesota. So we do have a very large area to cover for today. However, we are expected to see a little bit of a bimodal system for severe thunderstorm development. We have this enhanced risk further down towards the south, but then we also have this slight risk up to the north. We are expected to see a little bit more of a higher potential for severe thunderstorms on the southern mode for severe thunderstorms today. However, we are expected to see some severe thunderstorm development in a secondary location for the northern mode across the northern part of the slight risk region. I will be going over both northern and southern modes for today. We also do have a marginal threat for the eastern United States coast and the eastern Virginia coast into the Chesapeake Bay, including parts of eastern Maryland, Delaware, and southern New Jersey. This is going to be associated with Tropical Storm Ophelia, and I will be going over everything you need to know when we get to our tropic portion of today's video. But as for our threats for today, we do have a 5% tornado threat for this entire slight risk region, including the enhanced risk region. We also have a secondary location for tornadic development where we could see one or two brief tornadoes for the marginal threat for the eastern United States coast region with Tropical Storm Ophelia. I will be going over that as well. As for our wind threat, we do have a 30% wind threat for the enhanced risk region with a very large 15% for the rest of the slight risk region, as well as a 5% wind threat for the marginal threat for the eastern United States coast with Tropical Storm Ophelia. Then if we take a look at our hail threat, we don't really have all that much of a hail threat for the marginal threat for the eastern United States coast because it is a tropical storm, and speed shear is a hurricane's kryptonite, so that's why we aren't expected to see any hail potential for that marginal threat across the eastern United States coast. However, we do have a 30% for the enhanced risk region with a very large possibility outside of that 30% chance region for the southern half of the slight risk region and the enhanced risk region for the threat of large to very large hail and possibly even gorilla hail. But we could also see some small to medium hail extending up into the northern mode of that slight risk region for today. Taking a look at the tropics, primarily focusing on Tropical Storm Ophelia, we do have Tropical Storm Ophelia here, and it is expected to be downgraded in the early morning of Sunday by tomorrow into a tropical depression, which is indicated by these Ds. However, currently it is a tropical storm still, and we do have our warnings up along the coast from North Carolina into the Chesapeake Bay and across the coast of Maryland as well into Delaware. So we definitely have our warnings out. We are definitely expected to see the threat of storm surge from this as well as coastal flooding and some more inland flooding and flash flooding. If we take a look at our peak surge, you can see that we are expected to have a storm surge up to 5 feet in anywhere in yellow. That includes some of the more inland river systems. We could definitely see some storm surge up to 5 feet in anywhere in yellow, as well as storm surge up to 3 feet anywhere in blue. So we are definitely expected to see a little bit of storm surge from this. So definitely make sure you are watching out for that if you live anywhere along the coast of Virginia, the Chesapeake Bay, or the coast of Maryland and North Carolina. Make sure you are definitely watching out for any storm surge and coastal flooding. If we take a look at our flash flooding potential for Tropical Storm Ophelia, we do have a moderate risk that does extend into Richmond and North Carolina. I'm not sure why my pen got so big there for a second, but we do have a moderate risk that does extend into it extends from Richmond into North Carolina, so we definitely have a pretty high chance for flash flooding for today, more inland. However, we are expected to see a slight risk that does extend up along the rest of the eastern United States coast from North Carolina into Long Island and the coast of Connecticut. In the next 3 days, we could definitely see tons of flash flooding along the coast of the eastern United States region. So we are definitely expected to see tons of rainfall across the eastern United States coast. So do make sure you are watching out for any flash flooding, including coastal flooding. If you live anywhere along the coast or even more inland, do make sure you are watching out for any flash flooding. and as well as the threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes, we could definitely see a atmosphere that could potentially support some spin up in the atmosphere to allow for 1 or 2 brief tornadoes. So do keep that in mind and watch for updates if you live in any of the areas that could potentially be affected by Tropical Storm Ophelia for today. Taking a look at our radar omega model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, focusing on the slight risk in the enhanced risk region for the Central Plains into the Midwest. Let's first start off with the southern mode for severe thunderstorms, and then we'll move on to the northern mode, as again we do have that bimodal system, so we are expected to see 2 main regions for severe thunderstorm development with this setup. So for the southern mode, we are expected to see a cold front swing out of this trough that is currently situated across South Dakota. And we are also expected to see a little bit of a dry line develop with aid from that cold front, and the subtropical jet should push a little bit of a dry line to form across Kansas and Oklahoma, which will lead to a little bit of a increased area for severe potential in the southern half of that slight risk region, which is going to lead to our southern mode for severe thunderstorms. But we also again have that subtropical jet coming out of the Pacific Ocean, and that should aid in elongated photographs to support the threat of that 30% hail threat and the threat of large to very large hail, and possibly even gorilla hail, compared to the northern mode where we only have that 15% hail threat with the threat of small to medium hail. But then let's move up to our northern mode here. You can see that we are expected to have a little bit more of direct impacts from this trough. We are expected to still see impacts from that cold front that is going to be draped across the Central Plains and move into the Midwest. We are also expected to see a little bit of a cold, or a little bit of a warm front that does extend across southern Minnesota into Wisconsin. Let me draw that cold front a little better here, and then that warm front. We typically do see a warm front develop just to the east of these troughs whenever we have a setup with a cold front draped across the Midwest or Central Plains, and 2 modes of a bimodal system for severe thunderstorm development. And that is because of occlusion in the north between that cold front and warm front. So that is going to lead to our northern mode of severe thunderstorms. So our occlusion towards the north is going to be a little bit more questionable. It may not be all that easy to see on our temperature models, and it's going to be fairly questionable, and there's some uncertainty with the occlusion in the north, and it's causing the northern mode to look a little bit bad in comparison to the enhanced risk region in the southern mode in the south. So we aren't really expected to see a secondary enhanced risk region for the northern mode, but we could definitely see a secondary region for severe thunderstorm development in the north, even if we are expected to see a little bit more come out of the southern mode. But then let's take a look at the Tropical Storm Ophelia, and then I'll move back into the Midwest and Central Plains. You can see that we are expected to definitely have Tropical Storm Ophelia moving across the coast. It is expected to continue its trek along the coast and then move back out into sea across. As soon as it gets out into New Jersey, it is expected to go back out into the Atlantic Ocean. We do have a lot of storm surge warnings and tropical storm warnings, and again, we are definitely expected to see some storm surge along the coast up to 5 feet. So again, do watch out for coastal flooding if you live anywhere along the coast. With tons of rainfall and storm surge, we could definitely see some coastal flooding and beach erosion along the coast. So definitely watch out for that and stay weather alert if you live anywhere along the coast or anywhere that could potentially be impacted by Tropical Storm Ophelia. But as for our severe impacts and our tornado potential, as tropical storms are one massive rotating storm with very strong winds that are circling around a central low pressure system, that is going to lead to tons of veering of the winds and tons of directional shear, which will support the threat of that 2% tornado threat for today for that marginal threat region. Then let's go back to our slight risk and enhanced risk for the Central Plains and Midwest. We are definitely expected to have tons of directional shear. We are expected to see a little bit more stronger directional shear to the north. However, we are also expected to see a little bit less instability. So that's why we don't really have that enhanced risk region, as well as the occlusion that I mentioned being a little bit more uncertain. So we are expected to have a little bit more directional shear to the north as we have more direct impacts from that trough. However, we are definitely expected to have some strong directional shear across this entire region for that 5% tornado threat, as we definitely had that building directional shear from the last couple of days from that trough advection. So including today, we are definitely expected to see a lot of that directional shear be used up in today's severe weather event. So that's why we have that large 5% tornado threat. However, when we get to our energy helicity index models, we are expected to see a little bit more of a better potential for tornadic development in the southern mode of the enhanced risk region. We are expected to see a little bit more of a better chance of tornadic development in the southern mode, and I will explain to you why that is when we get to our energy helicity index models. But as for now, we are definitely expected to see the threat of tornadoes for this entire slight risk region, as well as the threat for a small to medium hail and the threat of large to very large hail for the southern mode, as we are expected to see a little bit more aid from the subtropical jet to elongate photographs, as well as the threat of damaging winds, as we are expected to see a little bit more stronger instability to the south, leading to more of a threat for damaging winds in the southern mode. Taking a look at our dew points, focusing on the slight risk region and our northern and southern modes with our enhanced risk region, focusing on the southern mode first, where we have a little bit more of a better potential for severe thunderstorm development. You can see that we do have that dry line that I mentioned across the central plains into Oklahoma and Texas. As well as that cold front that I mentioned, we are expected to see a little bit of a triple point develop across Kansas and Oklahoma, as what would typically be typical for this type of setup, where we have a triple point in the south and more occlusion in the north. So with that triple point and that cold front that I mentioned, that is going to be pushing a lot of our moisture further to the east, and with that strong southerly pull out of the Gulf of Mexico, leading to building moisture across the central plains, with that cold front compressing it into a small area, that is going to lead to increased dew points across the central plains into the Midwest for the southern mode, which will lead to dew points that could get as high as the mid 70s and the low 70s across the southern mode. So that will lead to tons of instability for the southern mode. And if we take a look at our northern mode, we are definitely expected to have much weaker moisture in the atmosphere compared to the southern mode. We are expected to have dew points that are going to be getting as high as the mid and low 60s, and possibly some isolated 70s in some regions. So we are expected to have overall much weaker moisture in the atmosphere compared to the southern mode. So that's going to lead to overall less instability in the northern mode compared to the southern mode, which will lead to overall a better chance for severe thunderstorm development in the southern mode. Taking a look at our temperature, I primarily want to focus on the northern mode and our occlusion between our cold front and our warm front in the northern mode. However, as I did mention, we have the cold front draped across the Midwest and Central Plains, which is going to be leading to that triple point with that dry line for the southern mode, which is typical with this type of bimodal setup. But then we also have the low pressure system in the north, and then we also have the cold front again draped across the Central Plains into the Midwest. But then we also have this warm front that extended across Iowa and Wisconsin, which is going to lead to a little bit of occlusion across the northern mode. Our occlusion overall looks a little questionable, which is going to lead to a little bit of uncertainty for the northern mode, and is going to cause the northern mode to look significantly worse compared to the southern mode, as well as overall we just have better instability in the southern mode and better moisture in the atmosphere for the southern mode, which is going to lead to a increased potential for severe thunderstorms in the southern mode. But we also have a lot of uncertainty for the northern mode, as our occlusion looks fairly bad, which is going to lead to less of a potential for severe thunderstorms compared to the southern mode. And now I want to take a look at our widespread and long-term temperatures for the United States for today and tonight. I primarily want to focus on Texas, but first we're going to focus on the Pacific Northwest and the effects from this trough that just passed through. We are expected to have much colder temperatures across a vast majority of the western United States. Temperatures that could get as low as some freezing in the in parts of western Wyoming here, and overall widespread. We are expected to have much colder temperatures, especially at night, for a very large portion of the western United States because of the trough and cold front that moved through. And then we should also see some much colder temperatures after this trough moves out of the region by tomorrow into some of the eastern United States regions. That is going to lead to much colder temperatures tomorrow night across the northern central plains, We could potentially see temperatures that could get as low as the 50s and the 40s overnight. Not only for tonight, but also for tomorrow night as well. They could get even lower after this trough moves out of the region, and we see the full scale effects from this cold front and trough. But then across Texas, we are expected to have a large temperature return, and a return of temperatures that are going to be in the widespread hundreds and above. We are expected to have temperatures that are going to be getting into, again, widespread temperatures of 100 and above for parts of western Texas into northern Texas and southern Oklahoma. So we are definitely expected to have some temperatures that could get into 100 and above wherever you see any of these colors in the maroon, the very deep reds in maroon. That is going to indicate temperatures of 100 and above. And if you are noticing that you live in any of the areas where we could see temperatures of 100 and above, definitely make sure you are watching out for any heat-related illnesses such as heat stroke, or make sure you are definitely staying hydrated if you have any plans outside. Which I honestly do not recommend you have any plans outside with temperatures this high. Heat stroke is very common in temperatures this high and could potentially become deadly if you're doing things outside. So honestly, I do not recommend having any plans outside with temperatures that are 100 and above. And if you have to, definitely make sure you are staying hydrated and staying alert for any heat-related illnesses such as heat stroke. Taking a look at our instability, focusing on the slight risk region for the Midwest into the Central Plains and the Southern Mode enhanced risk region, you can see that we are expected to have very, very strong instability compared to the northern mode. You're expected to have significantly higher instability for the southern mode, with Cape values that could be getting as high as the upper 3000s and the 4000s, the low 4000s, possibly even the mid 4000s across eastern Oklahoma. We are definitely expected to have tons of instability in the southern mode, as we did have tons of moisture in the atmosphere to definitely support very, very strong instability for the southern mode, which will lead to overall a better potential for severe thunderstorm development in an enhanced risk region compared to the northern mode. So with this, with our elongated photographs being aided from our subtropical jet and a lot of the veering of the winds and our directional shear, we could definitely see the threat of large to very large hail and the threat of a few tornadoes across this region. And then as for the northern mode, if we roll it back here a little bit, as thunderstorms are expected to begin developing after or before the southern mode. So taking a look at our instability for the northern mode, we definitely have some instability here. Instability that is going to be mostly moderate in anywhere from the 1000s range into the mid 1000s range, possibly getting into the 2000s range in some locations, but overall it's going to stay mostly in the widespread 1000s range, which will lead this will definitely fuel and support our various threats for our 5% tornado threat, where we have a lot of that directional shear from this low pressure system in our trough. This will definitely lead to and support our 5% tornado threat and a few tornadoes across this region, as well as our small to medium hail across this region, as we are expected to have a little bit less elongated photographs because we don't really have that aid from the subtropical jet that the northern mode does. That the southern mode does. So we are expected to have the threat of a small to medium hail, which will be supported by our instability, as well as the threat of that 5% tornado threat and a few tornadoes across this region. However, we could see some significantly less energy helicity index readings compared to the southern mode, as we have much less instability. However, we definitely have tons of directional shear, but we have much weaker instability, which will probably lead to overall weaker energy helicity index readings. But then let's take a look at the instability for the marginal threat for the eastern United States coast for Tropical Storm Ophelia. For the marginal threat region, we are definitely expected to have tons of instability being pulled out of the Atlantic Ocean along the coast, more so in the coastal regions. If it goes too far inland, it does look like it weakens down into much weaker instability. So we are expected to have much stronger instability that will support our 2% tornado threat, more so along the coast, before it weakens back down into much weaker instability. However, this instability will definitely be supportive of our 5% tornado or 2% tornado threat, our 5% hail threat with the directional shear that we have from Tropical Storm Ophelia. So we could definitely see the threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes and the threat of damaging winds from this. Taking a look at our energy helicity index, focusing on the southern mode first, where we have our 5% tornado threat, and I said that we could have a little bit more of a better potential for tornadic development in the southern mode. we are definitely expected to have we are expected to have very strong energy helicity index readings for the southern mode across the southern mode region for this 5% tornado threat. However, a lot of this directional shear widespread will definitely be indicative and supportive of this 5% tornado threat, this very wide 5% tornado threat. However, for the southern mode, we do have significantly stronger energy helicity index readings compared to the rest of the slight risk region. So that could lead to a little bit of a better potential for tornadic development in the southern mode compared to the northern mode. And if we take a look at the northern mode, we are expected to have some energy helicity index readings that would definitely be supportive and indicative of the 5% tornado threat in the northern mode, and we could definitely see a few tornadoes in the northern mode as well. However, overall, we are expected to have significantly less energy helicity index ratings compared to the southern mode, so we are expected to have a little bit more of a better potential for tornadic development in the southern mode, even though we have much stronger directional shear in the northern mode because we are seeing more direct impacts from this trough. We do have much weaker instability, but we could definitely see the threat of one or a few tornadoes across this region with our 5% tornado threat in the northern mode, but overall we are expected to see a little bit more of a potential for tornadic development in the southern mode. But then if we take a look at our 2% tornado threat for the eastern United States coast with Tropical Storm OPHELIA, we definitely have some energy helicity index readings that are going to be fairly weak, but definitely indicative and supportive of our 2% tornado threat, and we could definitely see the threat of one or two brief tornadoes across the eastern United States coast. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.